right, hello everyone, and welcome to MMA Island. I'm Zach Harkness, and today I'm joined by the number 8 strawweight contender in the world, Michelle Waterson. Welcome to the show. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful. How are you?
Well, I'm good. Thank you very much. And let's just go right into the first question. So the first question I have is about the first time that the fight with Angela Hill fell through. Now, your fight was originally booked for August 22nd, but unfortunately it fell through. So when you learned of this news, did you aim to rebook the Hill fight, and did you have confidence that you would be able to get that fight again?
Yeah, things like that always happen, and it's just kind of the way the cookie crumbles with fighting. You have to roll with the punches.
Did you try and angle for a new opponent, or was Hill the opponent that you knew that you wanted?
Always, I know we're both working hard towards that fight, and we knew that stylistically it would be an entertaining fight for people to watch.
Yes, it was. Now, leading up to the fight, you were originally supposed to be the co-main event to Thiago Santos and Glover Teixeira, but because of a COVID test, you and Angela were bumped to the main event. Now, did the main event change how you approached the fight at all? And did the fight becoming a main event make it a bit more high stakes for you?
I would say nothing really changed. We always train really hard and intense, so adding two more rounds to the fight is, I was really confident going into it. We always train hard, like I said, and so I'm always up for a good challenge. And I don't think it added any pressure. I think that something I've learned from a lot of my teammates is it doesn't matter where you fall on the fight card. It doesn't matter where you fight, whether it's in the back alley or amongst millions of fans. Once that cage closes, it's you and your opponent, and that's what I focus on.
Right. And the fact is, you were training for this fight to be 3 rounds for the longest time. And for you to accept a 5-round fight, because usually when you see short notice main events, you usually see them go to 3 rounds. So were you that confident in your cardio that you thought that your training would keep you sustained through all 5 rounds?
Absolutely. And like I said, it was an honor for the UFC to consider me for the main event, and I wanted to rise to the occasion. I wanted to show them that I am main event caliber, that I can go 5 rounds, and that I can be reliable to do so.
And your cardio looked fine throughout the entire performance. You didn't seem you didn't show any signs of gassing out. And, you've fought in a few main events, but after this one, I see a lot more in your features. So do you think if you have more time to train for actually 5 rounds, how good do you think your cardio actually is, that the fact that you didn't gas out when you were only training for 3?
I felt in a really, really great shape for this last fight, and I think it all kind of goes together. Your mental stability and your physical strength, and I just in a really good state of mind for this last fight, and it all came together how it needed to.
Yes, it did. And a big part of that has to be your team at Jackson Wink. And Jackson Wink has long been a top stable for MMA fighters. And what was your game plan going into this fight? And after the first 2 rounds, as all good coaches do, they had to motivate you in between those rounds. So how did they motivate you to go out and win those last 3 rounds?
Definitely the game plan was to take her down and finish her, submit her. We know that her ground game isn't the best. She doesn't like being down there, and I have good ground game, I have good jiu-jitsu, I have good wrestling. And those 2 rounds, I was a bit stubborn in sticking to that game plan, and I realized that I was wasting a lot of time doing that. And so, yeah, we had to switch gears and figure out how we were going to win the fight. And the great thing about MMA is it is mixed martial arts, and I know I'm a well-rounded fighter. I'm not only good on the ground in jiu-jitsu and wrestling, I am also, that is my foundation, is stand-up fighting, is with my karate. And I've been working really hard on my boxing and understanding my range in inside of boxing, and inside a boxing range and inside a kickboxing range. And so I think that was able to shine in this last fight against Angela. And yeah, I think it was for me just a mental shift of, all right, abandon the first game plan. If the takedown happens, it's going to happen, but don't be so married to it that it locks you down from doing any of your other using any of your other tools.
Right. And I noticed that too, that your game plan would probably be to take her down and submit her because that's where you have the biggest advantage. But in those first two rounds, as you mentioned, you were trying to get the takedown maybe more than you should have. So do you think that your mentality of I need to get this takedown kind of affected you from throwing your full like stand-up caliber? Because you can absolutely like strike with her, and you showed that in the later rounds, but in the first two, she was getting the better of you in the striking exchanges. Do you think that was because you were trying to get that takedown so hard?
Yeah, for sure that played a factor. And just, when you work on new things and introduce new tools into your toolbox, sometimes it takes a couple of fights, like live fights, for it to come out. Yeah, it comes out in practice, but it's practice. Yeah, it comes out in drills, but you're drilling. And so to land it in the fight is a lot easier said than done. And we went out there, we tried it. We did get takedown in the third round.
Yep.
Um, and so I do believe that slowed her down quite a bit, both physically and mentally. Just and it slowed her striking down because she didn't want to get taken down again. She didn't want to be held down there. And so I'll take I'll take one. That's all I needed.
Yeah, it seems like in the first two rounds of the fight, she was incredibly confident with her striking. But then as soon as that takedown happened in the third, and you were trying for that for a long time, she became a lot more tentative and a lot more gun shy. And it seems there is where you turned up your aggression. So us at home watching the fight on TV noticed that. So I'm sure you noticed that too in the cage. Did you notice that she was starting to slow down? And is that the moment where you realized I need to pick up my aggression?
I don't necessarily know if I don't know if she slowed down because of the takedown or if she slowed down just because we're in the championship rounds and her cardio wasn't there. Regardless, I smelled blood and I took advantage of it. There was some moments of stagnant. There was some stagnant moments, and in those moments, I decided to take initiative and push forward. And I do strongly believe that's what won me the fight.
Yeah, I think so too. And that's why I think the judges scored it for you. Now, you mentioned obviously that your game plan was to take her down, but you hear on commentary all the time with these wrestlers and people who are trying to take him down. If they get a takedown stuffed, it kind of hurts like their mental psyche and you won't see them attempt it a lot more. But you kept on attempting those takedowns. So, how did you keep yourself from not getting mentally beat down from not getting that many takedowns? And then when you finally were able to get one, how did you able to stay so mentally calm?
Because I am a full mixed martial artist. I don't heavily rely on one thing or the other. I see what opportunity presents itself and I take it.
Now, the fight with Hill was an amazing fight. That was a 5-round war and a fight of the night bonus. Now, during the build-up to the fight, a sector of the MMA community was under the influence that the fight was going to be not so good. Now, did you see those comments leading up to the fight? Do you let those things affect you? And is being in an entertaining fight as fun for the fighters as it is for the viewer?
It's a loaded question, I guess. There's a couple of answers to that. I don't pay attention to the noise before the fight. It's just it is unnecessary baggage that any fighter shouldn't have to bring into the fight with them. And if you're focused on that, then you're not focused on what really has to get done, which is getting your hand raised. I understand the criticism given my last fight against Carla. And, styles make fights, and that's just how the cookie crumbled that fight. I was disappointed in that fight, not because it was a boring fight, but because I wasn't able to execute how I wanted to. So it was more of a personal disappointment, not, how everybody else perceived it. I love fighting, and when you're not able to display your full capability, it is a disappointing. So I understand that, and I was fired up to get into the octagon against Ange. I was fired up to be main event, and I was fired up to go out there and display all of my tools because I knew that that's what I had within me.
Right. Now, when we were talking to your management about like securing this interview after the fight, you said she was ready to put on a show and that you did. Now, that fight was an absolute show to be sure. And watching that fight on TV was incredibly entertaining. But I always wonder, is being in those fights, like those big firefights, is it like a more enjoyable fighting experience for you, the fighter, as it is for the viewers?
You're always going to have those fights in your career. I think it's necessary to go through those wars to see what you're made of. When you're technically matched, it does come down to who has the the will to win. And it's nice to know that I have that in me, both inside and outside the cage. It's something that I can take with me anywhere I decide to go once I'm done fighting. And as far as, is it entertaining for the fighter as it is for the audience? I love those moments. It's just you can't make those moments up. It has to happen organically, and it definitely did. And it's kind of like when you're working, and you're super busy, the time goes by super fast. It's the same way when you're in the zone in a fight like that. Those 25 minutes flew by so fast. I wasn't even able to keep track of who was winning and who was losing, because I was so in the zone and I was just focused on what I was doing in that moment. And so I felt all my shots connecting. Even the shots that she was connecting didn't matter, because that's not where my focus was. My focus was, what am I doing to her? And the more I landed, the more energy I pulled, and the more fun I did begin to have.
And you mentioned about like getting into the zone, and I'm sure that's something that a lot of fighters like get into. But I can imagine like when you're doing that, time kind of flies by and you don't really have time to focus on the performance. And that's where I think the importance of the coaching comes in. So how important do you think was your corner advice that your coaches gave to you in terms to how you performed in the fight?
Yeah, it all comes together. Everything is important for a fight. It's kind of like you have to have all the stars align. Um, a huge factor I would have to say was my mental preparation coming into this fight. And it's just, I would say, an accumulation of mental practice over these last couple of fights. Maybe I want to say 5 or 6 fights. I've been working with the sports psychologist, Dr. William Shandon. And uh, I guess it's easier to be mentally strong when you're riding a wave of victory. But how can you be mentally strong when when you have a chain of losses? So pulling yourself out of the gutter and actually coming into a main event fight against somebody who they put you as an underdog, even though you're ranked higher. Where do you pull confidence from? And how do you constantly draw motivation? And that's where I had to really hone in and focus on my mental strength and my mental practices to say, what, none of that stuff matters. Yeah, you lost, but look who you lost to. You lost to
Yeah.
Joanna, who is the longest reigning champ, in a decision, and then a controversial split decision against again, another champion. So that's nothing to hang your head low from. These are failures, but you are still taking one step closer to your goal. So they're not like it's not a failure. It's a stepping stone towards a victory. And that's how I started looking at it, as these things made me stronger. These things made me better as a fighter, and this is what's going to win me the fight. I have this on my resume. She does not.
It seems like you're in that mental state. And you mentioned something interesting, is that you're working with a sports psychologist, and we've seen those sports psychologists do wonders for these fighters who go see them. So how much do you attribute your current mental state, which it seems like it's in a really good place, to your meetings with the sports psychologist?
Yeah, like I said, it all has to align. You can be so confident and think the world of yourself, but if you don't put the work in, it's not going to matter. And vice versa. You can put the work in and be super ready physically, but then the day before the fight, you start getting into your head, and you let those negative thoughts take over, and then you lose the fight. So it all has to align. And for sure, the brain is such an amazing tool if you understand how to use it. And nothing else will work if you don't know how to use your brain. It is really the foundation to any champion. If you talk to any champion, they are have a very strong foundation with their mental toughness, their mental strength. So for sure, I would say it had a huge bit to do with it. But in going with that, it kind of comes full circle, because I had to build my confidence mentally, and then I had to behind that pack it with actual physical work, and then the physical work gave me the confidence mentally to walk into the cage.
Right. And now this fight led to you earning your very first UFC Fight of the Night bonus and your second bonus in your entire UFC tenure. So how does it feel after that big war to be rewarded for your efforts with that 50K bonus? And after the fight was over, were you sure that you had secured it?
Yeah, definitely sure I secured it. I know those first 2 rounds were a bit wobbly, but it wasn't anything like a 10-8 round or anything like that. I was just, finding my feet, and I knew I got 3, 4, and 5 in the bag really concretely. So, but to get the Fight of the Night bonus, that was amazing. Definitely, like I said, the fight happened so fast. I was in the zone, and so I wasn't even paying attention to what this and that was. My focus was what was going on in that moment. So I was really ecstatic. It was just such an amazing night to get the win, first of all, to get main event, to get my brown belt, then to get main event, then to have, Dana White come up and talk to us about how his phone was blowing up and that we should have been on a pay-per-view. And, it just solidifies why you sacrifice so much in the shadows.
Oh yeah, that sacrifices. You really only see what's in the cage as the viewer, but that's why I like interviewing these people, like fighters like yourself, because I get to learn about like the struggles that you go through in order to get to the place where you are. Now, when most people think of your fighting style, they think of the flashy kicks and crazy strikes, but the part of your game that has been the most successful as of late is your ground game. So how did you build up your ground game in jiu-jitsu so fast? And do you think that it has caught up and maybe even succeeded your striking?
I mean, the majority of my wins, majority of my finishes are submission, and I attribute that to something that happened to me early in my career. I moved out here to Jackson's, and Coach Jackson, his style is Gaidu Jitsu, which is just like it's like street fighting, street fighting, and really geared towards MMA grappling. And I remember skipping classes and then trying to go to a striking class or asking one of my coaches. It, it, uh, it was actually Donald Cerrone. I was asking him, he called mitts for me, and he asked me, did you go to the grappling class? And I was like, no. And he was like, why not? And I was like, because I wanted to do striking. And he was like, you're never going to get good if you only do the things that you're good at. And you know, it was embarrassing because it was in front of all my other teammates, and but it really hit hard because it was a truth that I didn't want to hear, and I took that to heart, and I began to develop my skills that I wasn't good at, and it's gotten to the point where like you say, even my ground has superseded my stand up, and eventually, it kind of goes like this, where my grappling will get better, and then my boxing will get better, and then my wrestling will get better, and that's what I love about MMA, and I do think that's why I'm still relevant now, fighting 13 years, is because I continue to evolve.
Yeah, I think so too. And it seems like that moment with Donald Sterling was kind of very impactful for your career and was kind of the turning point for you to be where you are. So would you say that's one of the more impactful moments of your MMA career, hearing that whole speech?
It wasn't really speech. He just super embarrassed me in front of everybody, but it was a truth that I needed to hear. And I'm sure everybody's had those moments. And I've had tons of other moments like that with other people. I've had, like moments with my husband where he sat down with me and asked me just straight up, like, what is holding you back? Why are you putting all these other fighters on a pedestal? You are better than them, and I just think it's sometimes in my personality to, sit back and befriend people and want to be the nice guy and be lovey-dovey and all this stuff, but that's not the business that I got into.
Right.
Kind of, it's like, if I want to be in that business, I should probably pick a different profession. So, my husband's just like, you're a badass and you need to own it. And, just having him believe in me in times where I didn't believe in myself has really been motivating as well. Having Coach Jackson and Coach Wink tell me when I found out that I was pregnant that it's okay and that I still had a future in fighting was a huge moment for me, because I didn't know, what the future held for me. And there's just so many, little nuggets of wisdom that I've collected throughout the years.
Right, and it's made you to who the fighter you are today. But before your time in the UFC, you were actually the Invicta Atomweight champion and ranked at one time as the greatest or just the best atomweight fighter in the world. But you fought the majority of your UFC career at strawweight. So I can imagine, do you cut much weight to get to 115? What are the biggest differences in the cage between the two weight classes? And would you move down to an atomweight division if they made one?
Um, I would say when I decided to come over to the UFC and compete in the strawweight division, I had to be 100% sure that I was that I was confident enough to compete with the 115ers without a shadow of a doubt. I didn't want to have anything weighing me down. I didn't want to have any excuses as to why I lost. Oh, I lost because she's bigger, whatever. I'm a natural 105er. If I was going to come into 115, I was going to own it, and that was it. At the day of weigh-ins, we both weighed in at 115, and then tomorrow we're going to rock and roll. And so that's how I looked at it. And since then, I've really taken the time to put on good muscle and to really embrace this division. So I probably don't cut as much as some of the straw weights, but I because I have taken the time to put some good muscle on, I do still have a good amount to cut. I would say the biggest difference is that in 105 there were girls that were more my size, but that was quite it was a while ago, and I'm a different fighter now, and I enjoy the competition here at 115. And a lot of people have been asking me this lately, actually, about this 105 division. And I don't know if I would want to go back down because I've worked so hard to put muscle on.
Mm-hmm.
But I will never, close the door to an opportunity if it presents itself, and if it's worth my while to go back down to 105, if they're gonna give me the title shot right away, if they're gonna put me on the Ultimate Fighter show for a 105 division and have me be one of the coaches, these are things like that might be worth my while to go down back to 105. But I love being in the strawweight division. I think we're the most stacked women's division in the UFC.
Without a doubt, yeah.
And the most technical. And every time the strawweights fight, we bring it. And so I definitely am enjoying being in the strawweight division.
Yeah, it's definitely the best women's division in the UFC. I don't think it's close, really. But pretty much all the fighters who I've talked to who have fought at two different weight classes and one thing has remained constant. All of them say that they have better cardio and that they can take a shot better up at the higher weight class. So would you say that that's the same thing for you?
No, honestly, it's been so long since I fought at 105, but I think that there's like a give and a take, and you have to ride the line and understand your body. But a lot of people like being the bigger fighter, but when you are the bigger fighter, you are more depleted. You do focus more on the weight cut than you do on your technique, and it's hard to 100% rehydrate back to what you walk around at. But when you're not cutting that much, for me, I enjoy it because more of my focus can be on strategy and on the fight camp and how to break down the fighter versus how do I break down this fat in my body.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think a question that we all have is, after you won the fight, you were promoted to brown belt to what I imagine would be jiu-jitsu. So was that the deal, that if you won the fight, you would be promoted? Or was that like a surprise thing? And how far off are you from your black belt?
Absolutely, 100%. It was a surprise. I was not expecting that. I'm definitely blessed and humbled. I definitely don't feel like I am deserving of a brown belt yet, but my professor is, so I'll take it. I'm not going to argue with him. We've been working really, really hard on our jiu-jitsu, and I more than anything wanted to be able to finish Angela. It just didn't pan out that way, but it will, and I will continue to chop away at my jujitsu. And I don't know, it's gonna be a while until I get my black belt. It's hard because, while I'm doing MMA, I'm also learning jujitsu, and those are two completely different animals.
Mhm.
So I just have to be patient with myself and enjoy the process.
Now, a lot of fighters who are proficient in grappling like yourself you've seen a lot more of them go compete in like these grappling promotions such as Polaris and Submission Underground. I don't know, kind of a way to stay active and test their skills. Is that something you've ever considered doing?
I think it would be lots of fun to do. It's just, when I am not fighting, I have so much other things going on. I put a lot of things, on the back burner just to simmer while I'm training for my fight. And we have so many things in the works. We're working on our fitness app, and we just launched our shoe line, and we're working on our merchandise, and we just opened up a restaurant here locally. And I have a daughter who is highly active in gymnastics and goes to private school and needs lots of help with her homework. So a lot of stuff to take care of here at home when I'm not in fight camp that needs my attention.
Right. No, that makes 100% sense. And I want to jump back in time here. So you are one of the first people brought up when people think of Jackson Wink fighters. So how did you find your way to Jackson Wink, and how would you describe the environment is at the gym?
Jackson Wink is my second home. It really is. It's one of those places where if I am feeling down, if I'm feeling lonely, if I'm feeling lost, I can go to the gym, not say a word, sit down, and be okay. Nobody has to say anything to me either. It's just that's my sanctuary. That's my home. Um, and I ended up going because you know Donald moved out there for training, and I was actually on a reality show in Las Vegas at the time called Master Toddy's Fight Girls.
Mhm.
And when I was done filming, I didn't want to go back to Colorado. I wanted a change. I wanted a change of environment. I wanted to pursue my passion. I wanted to kind of see where the one took me. And I was actually thinking about moving out to California, but Donald just told me that there were a bunch of really good girls out in New Mexico, and he's talking about Holly Holm and Julie Kedzie.
Mhm.
And he's like, come out here and train with them for a couple of weeks and see how you like it. I mean, it can't hurt. And he's right. It's like I don't have anything holding me down. I didn't have any obligations or any responsibilities. I could visit, and if it's something that I didn't like, I could always go anywhere else. And so I went down there, and that was it. Albuquerque became my home.
Right. Yeah. And you've been there ever since. So it seems like you've grown a lot in your time there. And I can imagine you have so many great fighters to train with. So who are some of those like special few fighters that you train with and your training partners that you think have really helped accelerate your career? Because a good fighter has great training partners always, pretty much.
I would say, from the jump, I would say it is Holly Holm, Julie Kedzie, Jody Escabel. Those are the girls that were there when I first got there. They kind of initiated me into the Jackson gang, and also Nikki Garcia. She's no longer fighting anymore, but so those are girls that had initiated me into gang. Little John too, John Dotson was really vital like earlier in my career. Now we have a huge stable of girls, a lot of amateur girls that are like super hungry, chomping at the bit to get into these bigger promotions. And I think as a veteran fighter, sometimes you tend to stay away from the hungry young up and comer people because it can be a bit intimidating, right? These kids came up watching you. And but I really do attribute my success and my evolution to training with them because they want it just as bad as I did when I was there, and to get that push is like no other push. So we got Marissa and Carson and Tally, who just actually fought for Invicta, and Amanda Borg, Ray Borg's wife, and Celine Haga, who has just been, a fighter through and through for ages. And Lydia, I see it's so hard because they're my friends. I don't know their my last name. um, these girls, they're coming, and I'm grateful to have them as training partners. But also it's cool because, now that I've been fighting for so long, I can kind of be there as a bit of somebody who can, you know, give advice.
I was just about to ask you about that because during it seems at one point in time you were that hungry up and comer. You were one of those fighters who were just trying to make their name out there. Now that you're at the pinnacle of the sport pretty much, do you see yourself and do you see these fighters kind of coming to you as a role model and as someone to talk to like in the gym at all?
I would hope so. I never like force myself on anybody, but for sure, I'm always there for them if they need to talk to me, if they need advice, and vice versa. Like I said, it's a family. We're always there for one another, and I can always tell when somebody has an off day, and I don't even need to say anything. All I need to do is just look at them and sit next to them after their rounds are done, and just be like, "Hey, it's all good. We've had those days," and they know exactly what I'm talking about. It's because it's the blood, sweat, and tears. We go through it all together, and so it's easier to take advice from somebody that's like riding, like that's on the ride with you.
Right, that makes a lot of sense. And the start of your MMA career was different than a bunch of others, and this is because you didn't have any amateur fights. So, do you think that you had any advantages at all jumping straight into professional MMA, and why didn't you fight in any amateur bouts?
Well, you know, at the beginning of my career, it was still very taboo for the women to be fighting in general. It's hard to find fights. Um, I had a lot of I wouldn't call them amateur fights, but I would say a good 7-8 years of point sparring. Point sparring is so completely different from fighting, though, but it is still experience. But I had about 7 8 years of a point sparring experience, um, and then a couple of amateur kickboxing smokers, and it just actually ended up happening that way. I did it what My first MMA fight was supposed to be an amateur fight, and that fight fell through. And then the only fighter that they had available for me to fight was a 2-0 girl that was pro, and I had a choice, you know, take the fight or don't take the fight. And I had been training for so hard for so long. I was just so eager to fight that I said, all right, let's do it. So I took the fight, and it was a great fight for, and it actually pretty big arena, an Ring of Fire. I think there's like 12,000 people in the arena. It was a great fight, and you know what? I thought it was going to be a stand-up fight because my background is in karate. I ended up taking her down about 7 times and working my ground and pound, so it's lots of fun.
And the final question I have for today is you had one fight in the COVID era at UFC 249, but this was your first win and first main event during this whole pandemic fighting era. So, what is your experience fighting in an empty arena? And do you think that the Hill fight would have been any different if there was a crowd there? Because I'm sure that they would be cheering really loudly the whole time.
Oh, I hadn't even thought about that, honestly. It would have been that building would have erupted if there were people there to watch that fight. And I'm sure I definitely am one to feed off the crowd, so I'm sure it would have been lots of fun. But I do think I learned a lot from the first go around fighting Carla. Um, you have to focus differently. You can't worry about what other people, her coach, her coaches, the corner, the commentators are saying. You have to focus on what your coaches are saying and what you can do to win the fight. Because I think I made that mistake in my fight against Carla. I could hear her coaches telling her that she had to do something um, out of desperation, and I could hear the commentators saying the same thing. Carla has to do something if she wants to win this fight. So in my mind, I thought I was winning, so I didn't push the pace, and it cost me the fight. And I I can't rely on what other people's coaches are saying. I can't rely on what the commentators, you know, you know, you know, are seeing. I have to try to win the fight. I have to take the fight, and I have to do it decisively. And that's what I took away from that fight with Carla. And applied to this fight against Hill.
And I know I said it was the last one, but I think I have to ask this one before we sign off. Do you think that the Angela Hill fight, with all the great things that happen, main event win, promotion, fight of the night bonus, do you consider it the best performance of your career and your proudest win?
I think it was a great performance. I think it showed the UFC how much heart I have, and how much I'm willing to, bite down on my mouthpiece and go get it. Especially considering a lot of people thought that I lost the first 2 rounds. To me, best fights are when you're dominating. And so I would have liked to be able to dominate all 5 rounds for me to consider it, and I would have liked to finish the fight for me to consider it my best performance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And unfortunately, I think that's all the questions I have for today. I would like to thank you for joining me. Is there anything you'd like to say to the people out there?
I appreciate all the love and support and everybody that's always behind me, win or lose. You just understand that this is a journey, and that there are going to be ups and downs. And I love that you guys ride with me regardless, no matter what, and celebrating the win with everybody back at home. And I appreciate all the love and support you guys give me.
Again, I would like to thank Michelle Waterson for joining me today, and I'd like to thank you, the viewer, for watching this interview. I've been Zach Harkness with MMA Island, and I will see you all in the next one.